So the first thing which you need to keep in mind, unlike other certification, this is not knowledge based. This is more of like a competency based certification. If it is knowledge based, you just need to memorize all the input and output, and they are going to ask you question, and you're like going to click the right answer. I mean, that's how the knowledge based certification, more of like based on your recall kind of questions. But CBAP certification will never come under knowledge based certification. It is more of like a competency based, wherein they are trying to analyze if you have properly understood that particular concept or not. So all the questions related to your knowledge areas, they are not testing your real BA skills. They are rather testing your BABOK knowledge skill, as like your BABOK knowledge. So that is very most important thing which you need to keep in mind. And yeah, most of the folks found the question harder than they expected. But I would tell you, more practice plus more and if you practice more questions from the Techcanvass question bank, you will be able to clear the exam on the first attempt. That I can promise you. The next thing is, if I read 4 or 5 times, is it enough? So this is something which I cannot quantify, because it depends upon your intellectual capacity. There are folks who will read only one time and they are able to absorb the content, they are able to understand, they are able to connect the dots. And there are folks who are reading the book for 10 times, 20 times, and 30 times. Still, they are not able to demystify it. So it is not based on the number of times you read. It is rather, I would say, instead of quantity, I would rather focus on the quality of your reading. Whether first you go through the Techcanvass videos, and then what you can do is try to see whether each knowledge area you try to read an element or a task, and see if you can relate it with that of your real world. Because the best technique that I would recommend in order to drastically reduce your preparation time would be to visualize whatever you read in babok, though it is not applicable because we are have most of us are working on agile project. But I would recommend you that whatever you read on babok, I want you to close your eyes and visualize that in your current project. If you are doing BAPM, like you're creating a B approach or you're creating a governance approach, how will you do it? So likewise, when you visualize, and if you can think from your current project perspective, if you can implement it, how it would work. So that is going to be beneficial, because more and more you visualize, right, you can harness that power, so that you need not go through the entire content. Whenever you read something, you visualize that you are doing it in your current project. So that would drastically reduce your preparation time. So that is the best thing I would recommend. 2 or 3 times you go through the entire webhook and then harness the power of the visualization. And the very most important thing which I wanted to add is about the confirmation bias. IABA is not going to test your BA skills. So no matter if you have 10 years, 15 years, or even 5 years of BA experience, you will not be able to clear CBAP on your first attempt, because here they are going to test your babok knowledge. So that is something which you need to keep in mind. So unlearn what you know about business analysis, prioritization, requirement traceability, everything you can unlearn. And you, whatever you read in babok, you imagine that that's the way, or that's the standard that needs to be followed. So don't question the content. Many folks, they lose interest in reading babok is because each and everything they are questioning, they are like not able to accept it. They are like saying, no, this is not the way how things are done and everything. So if you have that mindset, I'm afraid you will not be able to clear the certification. Rather, you will have to be very nimble and you will have to accept things as they are. So don't question the content of webhook like, no, this is not practical and everything. Then if you started questioning the content, then I'm afraid your certification journey would be too long. So rather accept it that like it is not about BA skills or like the real world and everything. Rather, it is what is there in webhook version 3 that I'm going to assimilate and I'm going to answer that. That's it. The next most important thing which I wanted to add is about having a very good practice. As you all know, uh, especially for CBAP, scenario based questions, only when you go through the actual IBA way of asking questions, right? IBA standard questions, only then you will know like how those scenario based questions can be asked based on those tasks. So my recommendation is that you can go for Techcanvass question bank, because Techcanvass question bank is something that closely mimics the way how IB asks questions. So more and more questions you practice, you know that like, okay, this is how this kind of questions is what I can expect on the actual examination. I'm not saying that like those questions would repeat in your final exam, but my point is, when you practice 1,000 questions, right, you have seen all those important sections, important points in webbox from which all those scenario based questions were based upon. So your practice at least 1,000 lines of questions from webbox, another thousand questions if you practice from some other question bank also, so which means 2,000 questions you have practiced. So anyway, out of those 2,000 questions, at least 70 to 80% of the questions would repeat in your final exam, because they cannot ask anything out of the syllabus, right? So more and more you practice on the mock questions, I would say that you're on the safer side. So that if you cannot, but see, in order to practice on the mock questions, you should have some confidence with respect to the knowledge area content. At least 90% you should know all those content. There are folks who don't read BAPOC, rather they think that like I'll go and attend all the mock questions and then I'll come back and read. So that approach I would not recommend. That's more of like a reverse engineering kind of thing, which I would not recommend. First go through Babok, understand, connect the dots there, and then come back and attempt all those mock questions. And high chances wherein you may score 30% or 40% in your first attempt, but it's okay. So don't worry about it. So try to find out the key areas wherein you need to concentrate more and focus more on everything. And once you have that confidence, then if you're scoring 65 to 70% in your final exam, I mean in your full length simulation exam, then I would say you're ready for the final exam. So my recommendation is 65 to 70 is the yardstick which I would recommend, because we have noticed that most of our students who have scored 65 plus in the full length mock they were able to clear the CBAP certification on their first attempt. So that is something which I would recommend. And the most important question is like, how can I what is the strategy for case study based question? So what are case study based questions? So case study based questions is that like very moment when you click on the start button, right, on your exam day, you will get a simple question. So after looking into that simple question, you will be like, wow, this is easy. And then when you click on the next button, the next question can go for like 2 pages. It will have a table, it will have a use case diagram, it will have some paragraph, 6 or 7 paragraph, and again a table. And then what happens is there will be 5 questions associated with that particular question. Why IABA is keeping all those case study based questions towards the beginning of the exam? So psychologically, if you look at all competitive examination, they will keep all the tougher questions at the start of the exam in order to break the candidate's confidence level. So if you see GMAT or any competitive examination, all the tougher questions are always placed at the start in order to break your confidence. So the strategy which I would recommend you is, whenever you see case study based questions, I mean at the beginning, don't waste your time on those case study based questions. You have the option called bookmark. So what you do is like, you click on bookmark, and then you try to complete all the easier questions. Like I said, there will be CCBA kind of questions, like 1 line questions, 2 line questions, and scenario based questions, right? So you focus on completing all the easier thing, and then you come back and then you take up the case study based question. And the reason is, if you concentrate on case study based questions during the start of the session, I mean, that's the time when you're like active also. So when you get lost in all those details, statistics, and all those figures and tables information, you may feel lost. And if you feel lost, you may think that like, okay, I'm not giving the right answer here, I'm giving a wrong answer. So likewise, you may have that uh, think that like, okay, this answer is wrong, I did not click on the right answer. So that would automatically hit your confidence level. And then what happens is that like, to you may lose that tempo also. So it's always, my recommendation is like, focus on all the tougher questions, all the easier questions first, and then you come back for case study based questions. Okay, so that is tip 1. Tip 2, most of the case study based questions can be directly answered. You need not read the content. 60 to 70% of the case study based questions can be directly answered without understanding the context, without going through it. So what is the best strategy I would recommend? The very moment when you get a case study based question, skim through the content. So don't take 5 minutes, 10 minutes to go through the table, figures, and everything. Don't do that. That is going to kill your time. The best thing is skim through, like first paragraph, okay, second paragraph, third paragraph, what are they mentioning? Just look into the keywords there. Hardly you spend 1 or 2 minutes to skim through the entire content, like what is the name of the table, what are the figures in that table. Then automatically you go to the first question. And in the most of the cases, 60 to 70% of the cases, case study based questions can be directly answered without reading the context, because they may ask you what is the best technique here, or like what is the best strategy here and everything. So don't focus more on case study based questions. Case study based questions, in fact, case study based questions are one of the easiest questions. So don't fret more about it. So there is no separate strategy for case study based questions. Whatever you're preparing, right, with respect to your knowledge areas and technique, the same thing would be applicable for case study based questions. So don't worry about it. The next thing which I would recommend, the most useful tip which worked for me, is the memory dump. This is applicable only when you go to the test center, not applicable if you go for a proctored examination. So what I did is I remembered all the input, output, and elements. So reason is that like most of the questions will be related to the input, output, and elements, especially in BABOK, especially in CBAP certification. So what I did is like I tried to memorize all the input, output, and elements of all the 30 tasks, and I started scribbling it down. First time when I scribbled, it took around 30 minutes. And then I practiced it more, and then I brought it down to 10-15 minutes. And on the actual examination day, I clicked on the start button and I started writing down the input and output and elements of all the 30 tasks. And why I did that, I just after writing it, I got that much confidence wherein I felt that like I'm giving an open book examination, because any knowledge area, any question, I know what is the input, output, and I know what are the elements. So which means that like literally it was easy for me to zero in the right option, because I know the input, output, and the elements. So which means that like I made it an open book exam, and I recommended this strategy to many folks, and they also came back and told that this also worked wonders for them. Like because what happens is, if you have that anxiety related, stress related some issues, right, especially on the exam day when you click, and then high chances wherein you may feel that you have forgotten almost all of what you have read and everything. So in order to avoid all that trap, this could work, but this works only when you go for the exam center. First 15 minutes, yeah, you can kill your first 15 minutes, but that's okay because you're making it as an open book exam. And another thing which I would recommend you is like it's optional. You guys can go for classroom training. So there are folks who say that like I'm reading Babok multiple times, but I'm not able to understand the concepts and everything. So in that case, you can go for a classroom training. One advantage is that like the trainer would be able to help you with understanding all the Babok content. And another major advantage is that like the networking opportunity, wherein you can interact with business analysts across the world. And because the way how business analysis is carried out is different from project to project and country to country, so you get that particular because whenever discussions happens, you get to learn from their experience also. So that is also, so instead of relying on one example, you can rely on multiple example. So that is also something which I would recommend. So some popular exam myths which I want to debunk. So I need to by heart all Babok and all tests. So I would not recommend you to memorize all the content, because technically that will not work. Because if you rely on memorizing it and if you're not able to connect the dots, that will never work at all. And so I took a career break, so cannot take CBAP, nothing like that. Last 7 years and 10 years, you need to show around 7,500 hours. And I need to do ECBA, CCB, nothing like that. You can go directly for CBAP if you have more than 6, 7, or 8 years of experience. So I have 10 years of experience. I'll easily clear CBAP. If you are super confident that you have 10 years of B experience, then I'm sure that you will not be able to clear, because it is not about your total years of experience. It is all about your BABAC knowledge. So it's multiple choice. I can easily take educated guess. So this is one of the biggest trap. So what really happens is that all the questions, there are four options, and two options can be easily eliminated, and out of the remaining two, one option would be the best in the real world, and other option would be the best in the babok world. So your job is to find out what works good. I mean, what is the best option in according to babok. So that is what they are testing it also. Don't even fall for the trap, because the other option will also look good, but there is always a good and the best answer. So your job is to find out the best answer. So CBAP certification is tough. No, I'll not say CBAP certification is tough. It is one of the easiest certification. And there are some folks like the case of sour grapes, right? CBAP certification is not valued. Only real knowledge matters. I would recommend you to apply for jobs once you cross 10 plus years of experience, or if you're looking for on-site opportunities or like for client facing opportunities, go and apply for those interview calls. Then you will know what is the power of CBAP. So that's all I had today.